shipwright, then I will bid thee good fortune, and I will bid thee farewell, farewell. I'll leave a ghost at the helm to guide you through the realm. For here there'll be monsters, I don't deny that I'm worth. All I ask is that you name it for its birth before you make it. I did build it not just to watch you go, Name it Arthur, name it for the sea. Name it Arthur, name it after me. Name her Arthur, name her for the sea. Name it Arthur, name her after me. Name it after me, name her after me.
Jesus, smells so good.
Well, hello everyone. Hello everyone. It is so nice to see where everyone is joining from. Thanks for tossing that into the chat. All over the country, it looks like, which is pretty great. This is one of the good things to come out of COVID is that we had to learn how to connect with people wherever they were, and it reminded us that even as things have gotten back to normal, there's still great advantages to doing things that people can access from wherever they are. So thank you for joining us. I am Jason Haas, second generation proprietor and general manager here at Tablas Creek, and I am joined by our director of winemaking, Neil Collins.
Hello.
But it's just the two of us this time. If you came hoping to tune in to see Chelsea, she had a family engagement tonight that she could not miss. But Neil and I will do our best to be as charming as Chelsea, even though I know that'll be hard.
Yeah.
So
I've been that for a while.
Neil, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Those you don't know me, Neil Collins, now director of winemaking, been here with Tablas since pretty much since the beginning. Always part of the winemaking and also running vineyard stuff. Now we have vineyard manager, etc. But yeah, been very much involved in every facet of the winemaking, vineyard, and get my fingers in a little bit of everything where I can. It's very dear to my heart, of course, and I've been here for a long time, and I probably be here for a lot longer.
And we will be joined, as we have been for the last several of these virtual pickup parties, by Chef Jeff Scott, who will be talking food and wine pairing. So we'll have him join to do his white pairing and his red pairing. I'm curious if anybody wants to toss into the chat if you have attempted these dishes. That's really fun. So I know that some of you have gotten the Master of the World kits. So that is
I do.
these guys that have little 187 milliliter bottles of each of the 6 wines in the Classic Club shipment. I know also that other people are just opening a bottle of something that was in the shipment, or just opening a bottle of something that is
Dog
on out of
show
your
end.
cellar. Yes, we have all of the Vineyard dogs deciding that they need to make their presence felt on this too. One thing to be aware of, if you are opening all of those 187 ml bottles, it does add up to a bottle and a half of wine. So just be conscious of that as you make your way through the evening. So we hope this will be interactive. Please do toss in questions as you have them. Neil and I will be kind of conversing back and forth about the wines, but also trying to give you a little deeper sense of what we're working on at Tablas Creek, what else has been going on, how this most recent harvest wrapped up. So if you're curious about any of that, just toss a question in the chat, and Ian will pull it up onto the screen. We have Director of Marketing Ian Consoli, who is at the switchboard tonight. So please chime in. We'd love to hear from you. And saying that, we don't want to keep you too long from the first wine, so let's dive right into the 2023 Grenache Blanc. I am going to pull it myself out of my little kit, and pour myself a little glass. Neil, do you want to start off by just talking a little bit about sort of Grenache Blanc and how it came to be at Tablas Creek?
Sure. Yeah, Grenache Blanc was one of the original varieties that were brought in through quarantine to the property by Haas and Perrin families. It's a widely planted variety. It's among the top 5 white varieties planted in France, but you don't see it particularly mentioned a lot. It's mostly blended away. And I think for me, as with so many of the great varieties that we work with here, it's the first time that they've been in this country, in this state, and absolutely most certainly in this part of the country. So Grenache planted here at Tablas Creek on our soils, limestone and clay, and the hillsides, proximity to the ocean, etc., was an interesting thing. What was going to turn out to be, of course, everyone thought it would do well, but I think it's one of the great surprises just how dramatic it is. For me, I've always found it to be, if not then definitely one of the greatest expressions of the terroir here. I feel like the limestone really shows through in the Grenache Blanc. I kind of feel it on the palate and the structure, and also has this kind of licoricey anise, which smells to me like when you're out in the vineyard and you're digging around and soil's moist, and that lime, when you break into that limestone, I can feel that connection. We have an old block here, which is a part of this. It's not all of this. This particular wine had somewhere in the region of 7 different lots went into this. The oldest block, the OV we call it, was probably the first Grenache Blanc certainly brought through quarantine and knowingly planted in a big block in this country. And it gets better and better every year. In fact, the bulk of that block this time went into the Esprit in this vintage. I was looking earlier, and it's pretty exciting. So it was made in Foudre. This would have been made in Foudre and stainless steel, some ovals, a lot of different vessels, and then blended as we went through the blending process in 23. I think it shows great. I mean, it, as always, has that great structure and that great mouthfeel. Grenache Blanc known for its great acidity, but I feel here we just get real depth and complexity that you don't see in a lot of other regions.
And I think it's fair to say that this is one of the grapes that we feel like probably surpasses what it does most of the time in the Rhone Valley here at Tablas Creek. And we don't know if that's because of the colder nights here, or the more limestone, or the fact that we're generally doing it probably at lower yields than you would see in just a generic Côte-du-Rhône white. But it's been a revelation. It's been really, really fun. There's a question that Mary Smith asked about the Grenache Blanc and Lee's influence. Do you want to talk about that, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Lees are an important component in all the wines. Certainly, the Grenache Blanc here would have stayed on lees through its life in barrel or stainless steel tank, wherever it was, not stirred because we're not looking for richness. But yeah, I certainly can feel the complexity of that. But stylistically, I'm a huge fan of lees. I hate seeing them dumped down the drain before we're finished because they do bring some safety to what we do, in that they keep the wine secure, but also they bring texture and they bring mouthfeel, which I think is pretty important. But we don't stir really, so we're not going for that richness that the lees will bring. But certainly if you have a barrel that is showing a little oxidation or a little funk, and you give it a stir, the lees will come into suspension, then settle down, and it'll somewhat fine that wine and clean stuff up. So the lees are our friends. And then until you get into bigger tanks, and then they get a bit more problematic because they're so dense. But we don't deal in big tanks anyway, so not a problem for us.
Cool. I think we should talk a little bit about the 2023 vintage, because all of the rest of the wines after this are actually going to be 2022s. So I think Ian has some pictures queued up. 2023 was a very wet year. We broke records for rain. We got 50 inches of rain. You probably will remember some of the dramatic social media posts of like Las Tablas Creek flowing over Adelaide Road and cutting us off. That was not particularly the great part about it, but all the water that we got was terrific. And then it stayed cool. So we had this kind of lovely, long, cool summer. We had incredible growth of the cover crop. The wildflower season in spring of 2023 was just ridiculous. That's Ian's dog Rasta. Not as tall as the cover crop, which is a pretty good illustration of what 2023 was like. And then it was obviously a time where we could get the sheep through the vineyard 3 times. And we felt like the vines really showed the health that came out of that. And harvest, because it never really got hot. I mean, we had lots of nice, sunny, warm days over the course of the summer, but no sustained heat. Harvest started late, and it's really small and hard to see. But if you could zoom in on that, you would see that harvest didn't start until the middle of September, and it didn't finish until the second week of November. So that's roughly 3 weeks later than all of our other recent years, a month later than it was in 2022. And yet we were able to pick things without really any stress, because it stayed moderate and sunny and nice all the way through October and November. So that's my 30,000 foot overview. What's your memory of 2023 in the cellar? I know it's hard with 2024 just having happened, but
right. Well, I can tell you in that picture down at the lake there, I don't know when that was taken, but Jordy would have been underwater at some point in that picture. That whole thing was one big lake, which was pretty cool. What do I remember of 23? It was a hectic vintage. We had good yields. We made a lot of wine. We had a great team in the cellar who we told how mellow we were and how calm things were, and then they got here and it was quite hard work, which was great. But throughout that, I felt we had great balance, great acidity. I thought it was a good year, and I think the wines are proving to show that. There's quite a lot of richness in this Grenache Blanc that I'm tasting today, but in general, I thought with all the things we dealt with leading up to it, the harvest itself and the subsequent wine, grapes and then wine were fantastic.
Yeah.
Through the year. I mean, that rain was something.
I remember we went into the 2023 white blending, and we thought it was a good year, but we weren't really sure. It was a sort of an anomalous year, and there were lots of different things. And because harvest was late, things had taken a long time to ferment. And we came out of it thinking, not only is it a good year, this has a chance to be one of the greatest years we've ever had. And then I think red blending, it kind of cemented that idea in our heads that it's terrific. So There will be many more 2023s coming out to Wine Club members in next year, spring and fall. We'll have all kinds of stuff. So consider this a little teaser, and something to look forward to in the rest of the 2023s that are coming. Okay, let's move on to wine number 2, which is the 2022 Esprit de Tablas Blanc. This has all 6 of the Chateauneuf legal white grapes, which I think is really fun. It's only the second wine outside of France ever to have all 6 of these. The first was our 2020. Then 2021, one of the grapes, the Picardin, did not actually make it into the Esprit Blanc. So this is the second time it's happened, and I think that's fun. So
Really exciting.
when you, Neil, when you think of the Esprit Blanc and you're approaching the blending and choosing lots for Esprit Blanc, what is it you're looking for? And I think we can tie this in with a question that Joette Roan asked, which was, do we go into winemaking with the intention of making a specific type of wine, or do we let the grapes tell us what we'll make? And I think we can answer that question by talking about how we go about the Esprit Blanc. So I want to know if can you take the first crack at that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not that cut and dry, I suppose. I mean, we certainly have a history of what we've made and stylistically who we are. However, that style is based on where we are and the soils and the terroir, if you will, that we grow in. So yes, we go into the white blending knowing what Esprit has been historically. Do we know percentages? No, we don't. We do know that Roussanne will be the leader. I can't imagine that changing, but we go in knowing Roussanne's going to be the lead varietal. That's what we're based upon. As far as what I go into it looking for, I'm looking for, really for me, it's wines that are the greatest reflection of place. Not looking for dramatic, not looking for show-stopping. Roussanne with lots of oak on it, perhaps, which we don't make much of, but there is some in there. There's some barrels we could pick. I'm looking for absolute balance and an absolute picture of this piece of land. If I'm honest, I like the acidity. I like to pick wines with good acid, good structure. And then as you make the blend, you're looking to make the complete wine. I mean, reality from my standpoint is this was the white wine that Jason's father and the Perrin family bought this property to make, was this white, with the original intention of doing one white, one red. This is what we would have made. The rest are all incredible wines, but this is the focus. This is the point of being, if you will. So I want this wine to best display where we are and what this place can give.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll use this opportunity to talk a little bit about Beaucastel, because the Esprit wines are the wines that we make that are modeled consciously after the Beaucastel Chateauneuf du Papes. So Beaucastel is, of course, our co-founding winery. They've been in Chateauneuf du Pape. The land there, we know, has had vines on it since the 16th century. The parents have been there for 5 generations, and they're famous, among other things, for using the full range of grapes that are allowed in Chateauneuf. And that's, of course, where we get our grapevine cuttings is from that Beaucastel vineyard that has all the vines in it. So they are, I would say, compared to the average Chateauneuf producer, they are willing to persevere and grow these very late ripening grapes that may not be the most vigorous or the easiest in the vineyard. On the red side, that's characterized by Mourvedre. On the white side, that's characterized by Roussanne. And these are difficult grapes to grow, but they and we feel like it's really worth it. If you can baby them through the growing season and get them into the cellar, they will make something that has richness and texture and ageability, and is a great core for the other grapes that can bring in different fruit, different nuance, different more acid, different spice. So that's the starting point for this wine. And it has always been based on Roussanne, as Neil said, but it has been anywhere from this percentage, which is 33%, all the way up to 75% Roussanne in different years. So that's another way of looking at Joette's question. So we know that what we basically want out of this wine, we know that we want it to be based on Roussanne and rich and complex, but we're going to let the grapes tell us how to get there. So whether we use more of which of the secondary varieties or less and focus more on Roussanne. Do we want more tropicality? We'll add more Picpoul. Do we want more of that kind of limestoney texture? We'll go with things like Clairette Blanche and Grenache Blanc. So we both have an idea and then want to give ourselves space around the blending table to adjust to what we see.
And there has to be a focus of what we're trying to build, because we have so much choice. We can go in so many different directions with this wine, but we know what we're trying to do. We know what we're trying to achieve before we start, but that the nuances of that are dictated by the vintage for certain. There's so many, we could make a lot of different wines off of the selections in front of us, but I think one of the standout moments, and I won't mention names, but was a blending when we had two of our new cellar employees sit in with us, and they were blending, thinking of what they would blend, and they were a little more, shall we say, hipster than what we were doing, and they just seemed to miss the point a little bit. And after the blending, Jason's father came to me and said, "I don't think they should participate." And it's like, well, let me speak to them. And I explained to them, yeah, we could do what you're doing, and those were great wines, but we have a model here that we are moving towards. So much as we could have a lot of fun, and we do have a lot of fun playing with different things, we want our wine to be what it is, which is this style, and it is familiar with previous Esprits.
This vintage offered a few challenges for us in the blending of all of the whites, really, less so with the reds, but definitely with the whites, because we historically have had three major Roussanne blocks, and one of them was kind of getting tired, and we made the decision at the end of 2021 that we were going to pull it out that winter and then replant a different block with some more Roussanne vines. And then we got walloped by a frost in the spring that hit the second of those three blocks. So we were left really with only one of our three, beautiful frost photos. Brings back twitchy memories. So you can see on the left, you can see a new shoot that's been protected by frost protection, which is why the ice is on it. That's actually a happy picture. That's a shoot that was saved. And then on the right, you see one that did not make it. But that meant that we went from averaging something like 30 tons of Roussanne in a normal harvest, and in 2022 we only had a little more than 10. So that really constrained us. We ended up using every drop of Roussanne that the vineyard produced in this wine, and made less, and it's only 33% Roussanne. So fortunately, in those super low yielding Roussanne years, the Roussanne tends to come with even more richness and density and depth. So it could soak up more of those higher acid varieties and produce something that I really love the balance of. And there was a comment that Mary Smith had, which I thought was spot on, where she talks about the florality, and then added that there's sneaky complexity and that it's going to broaden out with age and be even better in time. And I agree with that 100%. What's your experience with aging the Esprit Blanc, Neil?
First, I should finish my tale. The two employees I spoke of earlier came back to the table the next day and were great contributors to our blending in the years to come. They got the idea, and it was a simple concept to grab, but it was an important moment for me because it really solidified what we're doing and how to bring people to that table. So
if you're watching out there, we love you.
Yeah, we do. And I'm sure they are watching. What was your question, Jason? Sorry.
Just talking about the Esprit Blanc and what it will do with some more time in bottle.
It'll improve dramatically with time. I think it's lovely now. It's got great richness. I think Mary spoke of it well. It'll deepen. I think it'll gain a little richness. So it's already pretty rich, I feel. But things tend to meld more, and it becomes more smooth, more seamless with time. And some of those floralities will come to more honey notes, and as it gets much older, into some nutty characters too. I mean, I think we know the Esprits from our verticals. The original 01 is still shining, which I don't think any of us thought we'd be sitting here saying that today, at least not with complete honesty. And if I go for an Esprit to show off at a tasting, I'm grabbing the 01 or the 3 or something back there right now, because they do age so well and they become so smooth and so seamless and beautiful wines. So I think this wine's great right now. I would not throw it out of my glass, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it's just going to become more mature, more complete, and more seamless.
Yeah, I feel like Neil has heard me say this analogy a handful of times. I think we sometimes scare people by telling them that this wine will go 25 years, as though you're doing it wrong if you drink it sooner than that. You are not. But if you have the capacity, getting 6 bottles and opening 1 or 2 now, and opening a few in a few years, and having enough so that you can check back on it in 10 years or 12 years even, is a huge treat. And we always try to have some older bottles around the winery. If you come and taste, we usually have older whites, older Esprit white, older Esprit red to get a chance to try, because it's a cool experience being able to age these wines, and we hope you give yourself the capacity.
I didn't have an immense amount of experience in aged white wines before coming here anyway. So to taste wines that we made all those years ago and just be excited. I mean, it's so fun with food. They really are exceptional. And yes, I haven't had to exercise patience because they live here on the property, but I would definitely recommend, if you have the patience, to put them away and forget about them for 10, 15 years, at least 1 or 2, and come back to them, because it will really make you happy when you pour it.
Cool. This is the point in the program where we had, I see Jeff is bringing food out. So I think he will deliver the food, and then we'll have him run back in and talk to everybody about it. This looks... I'm going to hold this up and give you a little teaser treat of what it will look like when, try not to drip lovely balsamic vinegar on my keyboard. Yeah. So in 2022, it is worth noting that in 2022, there were a lot of whites we just couldn't make. We ended up sacrificing the Côte de Tablas Blanc because there weren't enough pieces to be able to fit that together and still have enough wines to send out to the wine club.
Yeah.
We used all of the Roussan and all of the Picpoul Esprit Blanc, so we didn't have either of those as varietal bottlings in 2022. This really is sort of the signature of what the vintage was for us. Well, Jeff is running back in front of the camera. What sort of things do you like to pair the Esprit Blanc with, Neil?
A mouthful of food right now.
Oh, there's Jeff. Oh, never mind. We'll make Jeff go first.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeff.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and
Okay,
clear.
great.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, very, very good. Thanks for having me again. And hello to everybody out there. Our white wine pairing this autumn is a dish I've done for many years in different incarnations. First time at Tablas Creek. And so this is a Sicilian Yellowfin Crudo. And the influences that have all kind of come together in Sicily kind of speak in this dish, where we have dried golden raisins that are sultanas, pine nuts. We have a little bit of fleur de sel and chive, a very simple Sicilian olive oil, and then a beautiful, this is my addition to it, a beautiful 50-year-old sherry vinaigrette. And even at 50 years old, this sherry vinegar is quite powerful also. And it adds a little edge to the fattiness of the tuna. And it's a dish that I really, really like, always get positive feedback on. And I love the fact that it brings in so many different cultures and so many different flavors to the plate. As I said on the recipe that everybody has, really important to do a nice squeeze of either blood orange or Valencia orange on it. And it'll brighten up it again too. And also, #1 ahi tuna, plus grade, really, really nice and dark. And just taking care of that, making sure that you dry it really well and saran wrap it, and then it'll be good to go for you. And this is the kind of dish that you can sear off and do. It won't take you a half hour to do, which is really fun. How do you guys like the flavors?
I love the pine nuts with the Esprit. Really, Mediterranean feel. Pine nuts, I mean, the whole thing is great. So to answer your question, Jason, I like to do a Sicilian Crudo with the Esprit when I.
What a coincidence!
Yeah, it's a particularly the pine nuts for me are hitting with the Esprit. You get really good little note there.
Can you taste the smoothness but still a little edge in that sherry vinegar?
Yeah.
Yes.
It kind of brightens it. This is the sherry I'm using. I don't know if anybody wants to see it. I'm sure that you can get it online, but this is a Grand Capriette, and it is 50 years old, and really has intense flavor and all different types of aroma to it. On Crudos, it gives a chef so much opportunity for flavors. There's really no rules on a Crudo, where it's a little bit more strict, say for sashimi, and we're using those traditional flavors. And so olive oils, oranges, olives, fantastic. A Provençal Crudo is really, really nice as well. You can use hamachi, salmon. I prefer tuna with this. The lore is that the Sicilian fishermen were out getting tuna, and they had pine nuts and raisins in their pockets. And so that's where this dish kind of came from. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll see you back in about half an hour for the next pairing. We have a couple questions to answer. First, I think Mary's comment is funny. I sympathize with her needing to create a stash somewhere else. I do the same thing. And then a question from Christy asking about how to keep an Esprit for 10 plus years. So it's the same way that you would age really any other wine. Constant temperature is the most important thing. People, I think, sometimes obsess too much over like keeping it cold. I mean, the recommendation is somewhere between 55 and 60 degrees. But if it's a little warmer than that, that's actually not that big a deal. As long as the temperature is constant. What you're trying to avoid is the temperature going up and down and up and down and up and down. So I have a cellar room that my dad designed that stays at 60 degrees, which is great. There are the mobile storage things that you can set to whatever temperature. I know people who swear by 52 degrees because they think it ages everything more slowly. But anyway, just constant temperature in the dark somewhere, and you should be good to go. Okay. Cool. Should we start with the reds, Neil?
Yeah.
Okay. Wine at number 3 is going to be our 2022 Estate Grenache. And one of the fun things is that this shipment is in a lot of ways kind of a deep dive into Grenache. We've got the Grenache Blanc on the white side. We have the highest amount of Grenache Blanc we've ever used in the Esprit Blanc. Then we have a side-by-side of 2 different red Grenaches. One, our estate from Tablas Creek, and then one, the Lignee de Tablas, our Grenache clone from about an hour north of here in Monterey County. And then we've got the En Gobelet, which is a blend, one of our wine club blends based on Grenache, and we'll have the Esprit red that uses a lot of Grenache in that blend. So we hope that you like Grenache. If you don't like Grenache, this might not be the evening for you. But if so, then we think that these wines might turn things around. So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the Grenache as a variety, what it's like in the vineyard, what it's like in the cellar, Neil?
Yeah. I mean, a great comment that someone made to me this summer, we were talking about Grenache, and I was saying talking about a Grenache that we'd made, and we'd make a Grenache rosé, and they made the comment of, when you make a Grenache, where in the rainbow of Grenache do you want it to be? Which was such a good comment, because Grenache is so versatile. I mean, from a very, very pale rosé, a la the Patalan rosé, for example, which is not 100%, but it is based in Grenache, all the way up to some of the crazy 16% alcohol woody Grenaches that you can see from California, and everything in between. They're light and stemmy. So it can do so many different things. In the vineyard, it's pretty easy. It likes to grow. It's quite vigorous. Biggest problem for us, perhaps, is the skins do bleach out in the sun, so you have to try and keep it in some shade. Otherwise, the clusters end up going pink or even white at times. So we try and keep them in the shade. It generates great sugar, holds good acidity generally, and hence you can take it where you want. I mean, we pick relatively early. You certainly could take this up a lot riper than we choose to. So again, it's a super versatile a wine. We tend to keep it out of any new wood. It's mostly stainless steel or big, large format wood tanks where it won't feel any influence of oak, because the purity of the fruit and Grenache is pretty important to us.
There's if anybody is interested in that rainbow of Grenache idea, we will be announcing next month that one of our holiday packs that we're going to be doing is literally called the Rainbow of Grenache. So it's going to have Grenache Blanc and Grenache Rosé and a couple different Grenache, a couple different Grenache Noirs. So if you have kind of Grenache loving friends or ones who you think should be, stick a pin in that idea.
Yeah, I had no idea that it was a thing. I just thought the guy.
You were not in that meeting, so I was very impressed that you pulled that out. So, let me actually approach this a different way. So, we know that Grenache can go anywhere from that kind of bright, high tone, almost cranberry fruit and spice, all the way through kind of more red cherry, even to black cherry, and ultimately can go to something even like kind of figgy if it gets super ripe. I've always thought that those like darker, richer Grenaches have a lovely place in blends. On its own, we've tended to choose those higher toned, brighter Grenaches for the varietal bottling. Is that something for you, Neil, that is that conscious, or is that something that you feel like it just turns out that way because we choose the denser, lusher, darker toned Grenaches for other wines?
I think there's a little bit of both, but I think we've landed more on the, and to some degree, of course, we're given the fruit we're given from the vineyard. We farm it as best we can. I think we've fallen on our varietal Grenaches to fall a little more on not the lighter style, but middle of the range, middle of the rainbow, if you will, with a little bit of savory note. I do think the En Gobelet, the Esprit, the Panoply tend to gobble up the slightly bigger, more intense Grenaches, but they're in blends at that point. So I'm not sure we would want those to be our single varieties, because it's not stylistically our way. But within a blend with some Mourvèdre and some Cunoise, it mellows it down a little bit, and I think that's where it's most appropriate for us. And I like where we end up with our varietal Grenaches, that they fall in this kind of spice and fruit level.
I think all of us who make Grenache are grateful to the people who have made paler Pinot Noirs acceptable over the last decade. There was a stretch in the world of American wine where if it was not opaque, like it was not considered serious. And I think Grenache is a really great example of a grape that does not need to be inky in order to have a ton of complexity. I think there's been Sarah that you should pull up, Ian.
I think there's some producers that have, to be fair, that have helped that along. Like the Tribute to Graces, those guys that have done Grenache with super light color and kind of a stammy character and run with that and had great success with it. I don't think everybody could have pulled that off, but it really, some great producers making Grenache in a different style really opened the door to allow people to play with this grape, which is great because it's a great grape for California and it's so versatile.
Yeah, and I mean, you can go all the way back to like the example of Chateau Reyes in Chateauneuf-du-Pape, which is 100% Grenache and is this lovely kind of pale, ethereal wine in most vintages, and it's one of the unicorns of the wine world. Bev asks, what is the typical flavor profile for Grenache in the Rhone? I think it is generally a little darker toned than this Grenache that's in your glass, somewhere in between this one and the one that you will have next. That'll be the Lignee Grenache. I'm not going to jump ahead quite yet, but I would say that ours tends to be a little redder in fruit and a little higher toned, a little more acid. And the Rhone, which is after all warmer at night and doesn't have quite the intensity of the limestone that we have here, tends to be a little softer, a little deeper in tone.
It's interesting. It's pretty interesting to go fishing around the family Perrin wines and the different Grenaches they have, from the stuff from Gigondas to I think it's the Rainier that's in the sand, old vines in sandy soil. I mean, all within their own, but vastly different from each other. And I was there this year chatting with Valentin and asking, about Rasteau, and they were saying, well, it's just getting so big, the Grenache there, because of where it is, and we're sitting in one region looking over at it, and there's so much variety within such a small region that it's really cool, and you can really dive into that if you do some work just within the Perrin line. They've got a lot of Grenaches from very different areas, which we've done a little bit. I've never sat down and done them all in a line, but I have tasted them separately, and it's kind of cool exercise to see what Grenache is doing, different sub-appellations of the Rhone Valley.
And it is one of the most widely planted grapes in the world. You can find it all over the Mediterranean, from Spain to France to Italy, and all over the south of France in some really quite different regions from one another. So one of the things I want to talk about with regards to this wine and with regards to 2022 in general is that I feel like this is a vintage where our regenerative organic work particularly shone through. So here you can see the back of the Grenache. That's the regenerative organic certified, that gold seal that we have from all of our 2022 estate wines. But and I think this is true in a couple of ways. It helps us all the time, but I felt like there were two ways in which it was particularly valuable in 2022. One was in the soil health piece, where the rain that we got in 2022 came early. Was actually in the like November, December of 2021. We thought at the end of December that we were set up for this nice wet winter because we were at about 200% of normal rainfall to date. And then it just stopped raining. We got no rain in January, just a trace in February, and no rain in March. And it got a little bit in April, but by that point, kind of the die had been cast. And so all of that regenerative work we're trying to get as much organic matter in the soil as we possibly can, focus on microbial activity. All of that helps the soil retain the water that we get in the winter and regulate its release to the vines in the summer. So that helped us get through what was a very long, dry, hot summer. And there was a big heat spike in July that caused a lot of damage at a lot of other local wineries. Talked to winemaking friends who lost big chunks of vineyard to sunburn. And we largely dodged that July issue. And then the second way in which it really helped us was when it heated up again, another really kind of brutal 10-day heat spike that started the last day of August and continued through the first week of September. Yeah, you can see that heat spike there. That's the big mountain in the middle of that daily high temperatures, where you can see a whole bunch of days in a row where it was up over 105. And we felt like the farm worker fairness pieces that require that you pay your farm workers a living wage for where you are, require that their working conditions are good, require that you honor their rights to organize and that they understand their rights as farm workers. All of that gave us this ability to keep up with the incredible pace of harvest in that first week of September. We ended up harvesting, there's our crew, shout out. We ended up harvesting a third of what is normally a 9-week harvest in 5 days at the end of that heat wave between the 5th and the 9th of September. And the only reason that we were capable of doing that was because we had crew who chose to work at Tablas Creek rather than go someplace else. And that's hugely important. And I know that we sort of thought about that living wage requirement as sort of a moral imperative that, like, once we knew that there was a living wage calculator out there, that, like, of course we should be paying all of our workers a living wage. But I feel like it came back to help us in very practical ways in a year like that, where there just was not enough labor in Paso Robles to keep up with a harvest that all of a sudden went to triple speed. So, what anything to add to that, Neil?
No, I mean, I as far as the ROC thing, I think the social pillar of that certification has been very important throughout everything that we do here, particularly in the vineyard. But you know, we've had a reputation before that of treating people well and being a good place to work. I mean, it goes deeper than just that certification and that pillar. We've been good at a good employer, a good place to work, and a fair place to work forever, since the beginning, for everybody. So I think certainly it was emphasized with that certification, but I think credit goes to Tablas Creek, the company, and the foundation that we've built anyway, that we've always been good to work with.
Yeah, lovely. Cool. Okay, so let's dive into wine number 4, which is the Lignee de Tablas Hook Vineyard Grenache. So, Neil, I love the story of how you first discovered the Grenache from this vineyard.
Well, I was going to ask you how much time we had, but so interesting story. I'm going to start not related to this particular wine, but it will lead us to that. And that is through my family's winery, Lo Madrone. We purchased some fruit from a friend of mine, Mike Siner, from his Batty Ranch vineyard. We bought some Grenache, and it was clone. These are the C or D Tablas Creek clone, so super interesting for me. But grown down in the Avila Beach area, literally right next to the ocean. I think it's a quarter mile or half a mile from the ocean. And I don't have time during harvest to go to Avila Beach to look at it, and I trust Mike completely. So he just sent me analysis and his tastings and notes of the grapes, and the fruit arrived. Jordan, my son, went and picked it up. He brought it up. We're all looking at the bin going, there's no way. This isn't Grenache. This looks like Syrah. It was so dark. I called Mike and said, you sure? And kind of verified where he got it from and where the original grapevines, that is, not the grapes, because he was growing the grapes. And I went to a neighbor because I was so confused. I went to a neighbor, Anthony Yam, over at Denner. He still had Grenache, whatever it was, C or D, hanging. And I went to look at that, and that looked like what we have at Tablas Creek. Okay, I think Mike's giving me the wrong thing. Fast forward, we find this vineyard, Hook Vineyard. We're looking for wines, vineyards for the Lignee project, and found the same clone of Grenache being grown up in Monterey. So Jordy and I went up to look at the vineyard. It was winter, so it was dormant, so I couldn't see the fruit or the vines, but asked, do you have it separate in barrel? Can we go to the winery and see what the wine is like? Went to the winery, the winemaker came out, got a thief, pulled a sample from the barrel, identical to the wine that I made from that Bassi vineyard, darker, more acidic, just the same clone. Not a million miles from us. If you're a crow, it's probably 40 miles, and a completely different character from that same clone. So really exciting. And really kind of, for me, emphasized what a great project Lignee could become for us, just displaying how dramatic the same Tablas Creek clone can be when grown in a different area.
Yeah, and that's really the whole idea behind Lignee. Lignee means lineage. So these are single vineyard wines that show that Tablas clone lineage in different terroirs. So it's our chance to play with the idea of terroir, which I love the translation that my dad used to make for terroir, which people often have this vague idea of, but he called it somewhereness, which I think is sort of right. That, I mean, that's the signature of place in a wine, or you could have terroir in something like cheese or another product that might be intensely connected to the place that it was made. But in this case, this is, I think, a cool opportunity to taste the same clone right next to each other, wildly different wines, as Neil said, 40 miles apart as the crow flies. But the difference is that we are a warm region, particularly in the day. We're a hot daytime region. And the Santa Lucia Highlands is on the coolest edge of where Grenache can ripen. It's really a region which is more known for Pinot Noir than it is for Rhone varieties, Pinot Noir and increasingly Syrah. And yet you put Grenache in that area, it takes a long time to get ripe. You get this lovely kind of darkness and almost a smokiness to it that I think is really, really fun.
It's quite linear too, though. You look at it, it's not big and round like you're expecting by its color. It's got great acidity, and I think it will age well. I've never made wine from here before, but I think it will show well in time.
Yeah, I think so too.
I did have to apologize to Mike Siner for doubting him after.
And if you think of this like range, there was a comment Sarah made about opening a Spanish Grenache to compare to these two. And I think it's worth remembering that there's this whole kind of continuum of Grenache between like the Lignee all the way on one side, as dark as you can get, and the estate as kind of bright and high toned as you can get, and you can be anywhere in the middle. So these wines I feel like are sort of setting the edge of what Grenache does, and then of course you've got everything in between. So obviously this was just year one of the Lignee program, 2022. We worked with a Grenache Blanc vineyard from here in Paso. We worked with this Grenache vineyard up in the Santa Lucia Highlands. We have new vineyards starting in 2023 and continued with those in 2024. Do you want to talk about the other Lignee vineyards that are in the pipeline?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really excited with the evolution of this project. You know, I mean, I think conceptually to make a wine from a vineyard that is farmed organically using Tablas Creek clones, but from a different area, different soils, different somewhereness, if you will. So looking for them, that's not easy to find, because finding someone that planted Tablas Creek clones specifically and wanting to sell them is a little difficult. But we've sold some different stuff out, and I'm really excited with the results. I'm excited with this one, but this was just step one for us, and we only had access to it for the 1 year. They weren't 100% organic, and they never had any intention to be, so it wasn't perfect anyway. So we went further afield, and we went up to Lodi Shake Ridge Vineyard, a vineyard farmed by Anne Kramer, a pretty famous lady doing incredible stuff, growing great grapes for a number of people, buying Syrah, 100% Syrah from her. And she fits the profile perfectly. A very different region, great farming practice, using our clones. It is kind of for me anyway, what I envision Lignee to be. So we did that in 23. We bought her fruit, and also another vineyard, which is in El Dorado, and that's the Finati Vineyard, which heroes like Steve Edmonds has made wine from there. And it was a gentleman, the father of the guy that now farms it, who was really enamored with the Tablas Creek program early on, and he planted Tablas Creek clones up there on their property in I think the 90s, late 97, some around there. So first year we made a red from there in 23, a blend of Mourvedre and Grenache. Again, farmed the way we would like to see it, and old, huge vines, a completely different soil profile, everything, weather. It's really, really cool, and a great farmer. You can tell the guy, he doesn't just farm grapes, he farms peaches and many, many different things, but he's pretty passionate with the grapes. This year we went back, did it again, both Shaker Ridge and Finati. This year we made a Finati white. Luckily for us, one of his customers backed out of the white, so we have a blend. Sadly, I don't remember the exact blend, but it's Grenache Blanc and Roussanne and Marsanne. I don't remember the percentages that it will be. And you can go. I went down and tasted through some barrels from this year today for reasons to be seen, but you taste those barrels, and immediately they're different than all the other barrels we're tasting at Tablas Creek. You can feel a difference in character. It's just not the same thing. And that's the point of the project for me. And it's really exciting. And to have those two vineyards particularly, I don't think we could look for a better choice of vineyard than Finati and Shaker Ridge. Great farmers using our clones and farming in our way. It's just really exciting, and hopefully we'll find more. It's much as I love being at Tablas Creek, it is nice to get out once in a while. So going up to and visiting other growers in other regions that are as excited about what we're doing as we are, it's really inspiring for me.
Cool. Well, this is the moment where we dive into the pairings that Jeff is making, and I see him furiously plating as I look to my left. Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk a little bit about your favorite food pairings for Grenache and Grenache-based wines?
Oof. Hadn't thought about that. Obviously, it depends on the where you are in the rainbow, but I like some meats with the Grenaches, particularly something like the Lignee. I think I saw somewhere that Jeffrey's going to do some Serrano here. I think that will go really well with our Grenache. I don't think anything too massive. I think Grenache has a delicacy to it, even when it's quite big. So I think it goes well with some braised stuff too. Again, nothing too massive. Be great. I like a lot of stuff with salmon, but Grenache is a good fit with salmon too. A barbecued salmon, perhaps on the grill, would be ideal.
One of my favorites is spicy sausages with Grenache, like some of the. Oh, excellent.
Oh, look at that! Food. It's so coordinated. It's like a restaurant. Right?
It is. It's not easy to coordinate in two separate parts of the property.
It's not.
Cool. So I see Jeff. Is lurking over there. But yeah, that kind of spicy like pork, which can be a little hard to do with a more tannic red wine, and doesn't really often work with a lot of whites. For me, that's a favorite. So, Jeff, talk to us.
Hey, nice to see everybody. I think in the last session I forgot to introduce myself, which is okay. But
Please,
if
introduce
you
yourself.
haven't seen me, I'm Chef Jeffrey Scott up in Paso, doing all kinds of culinary no-good situations everywhere, and catering at wineries and working at Kitchen 46, which is fantastic, and just a really, really great time up here. This next pairing is really, really, really simple, but very, very interesting in that I started thinking about, what kind of a tapa can I do that has a twist on it, or something that's different than just a regular Manchego and a regular Jamon Reserva. And so the story's kind of interesting. In culinary school, they teach you for all French appetizers to use a base, a body, a fat, and a garnish. And so that being like, say, salmon toast, where it's toast, cream cheese, salmon, and then dill. And so this is the same concept, base, fat, body, garnish. And so we have a lightly toasted baguette that should be, I like it a little bit chewy with a lot of texture. And then I decided to whip red currants with sweet butter. And I really enjoy the currant and sweet butter flavor. And I thought that would be fantastic with red wines, specifically wines of the Rhone. And so we added a raw milk Manchego, which is super high quality. And if you're buying Manchego, always use raw milk Manchego. And then a Reserva Jamon. And I think the flavors combined, really, it is a traditional taste, but with a really interesting twist on it, and great for entertaining. What do you guys think?
Yeah, super good.
Clearly, we're both hating it.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the twist on it being the currants, and you can only imagine with the raw milk Manchego how that plays with wines as well. And so, just something, last spring, I did 2 very complex recipes, and people were responding, I don't know if I can get through all this. So this year I wanted to do really nice, elegant things, but the kind of thing you can do in a short period of time at your house for entertaining.
I feel like both of these recipes were a great illustration of the idea that, like, if you get really high quality ingredients and just kind of let them shine, they have kind of a completeness because the ingredients themselves are so good.
Isn't that the truth? And I guess it's true of grapes as well. But when you get the highest quality in your kitchen, the old saying is get the best you can in the kitchen and get out of the way. And of course, through some cooking techniques, you can use product that's not as good and still sauce it and do all the things, which is why sauces and heavy foods were created, to mask the quality of some of the products. But I really enjoyed getting these products in and just letting them shine as well. So base, fat, body, garnish.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Working for me. It's great. Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, if people wanna connect with you or learn more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm at chefjeffreyscott.com, JEFFERY. And I'm, of course, all over town doing events and, of course, cooking lunches at Kitchen 46 in conjunction with Neil and Loma Drone Winery. And we're just having a great time coming up with unique and great ideas in town.
Awesome. And I saw that Ian just put that URL into the comments. So perfect.
Okay, great.
Cool.
All right.
Always.
Thank you so much.
Jeff.
Take care.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. So
I think Ian might be the ghost at the helm, which is the title song here.
So in a little interlude, while people either finish their tapas or think about Grenache, I wanted to take a little moment to just jump into what we've been seeing in the 2024 harvest. So I've had in my head that in a lot of ways this year is kind of a combination of the last 2 years, where we had good rain last winter, we had a cool first half of the year. People forget that because it's been so warm since the beginning of July, but up through the end of June, it was very much like 2023. I mean, it was the coolest years that we've seen since 2011. And then like we got to the July 1st and Paso was like, hey, wait a second. Like you're not. You're going to go back to what we were like in 2022. So it's been, it was cool to start the year, but it's been really quite hot since then. And looking at I'm in the middle of writing our harvest recap blog. The numbers came in very much like 2022 without the frost impact, but in terms of yields for the other varieties, in terms of sugars, in terms of pH. How are you feeling about 2024?
Well, really just coming out of it, to be honest. We just picked the last grapes 2 days ago. So it's been an interesting year. We were a bit lower in yield than we had imagined we would be and hoped we would be with rain, but the heat spikes during the year made a big difference to us. What I see in the ferments is good. great, and we got good maturity. We got great acidity. A little higher sugars than we're accustomed to when we actually chose to pick the grapes. Whites that I've been tasting are beautiful. Unfortunately, it's a bit short, but I think it will be a really interesting vintage. I think it'll be interesting in a good way, not interesting in a weird way. I think it'll be strong. But I think it'll be unique. I don't think it's gonna be harder to find one that this one was like. I suspect. I could be wrong, but I just feel a lot of good color, a lot of good intensity, for sure. I think it's going to be a fun one.
Cool. Yeah, we finished. Yields ended up down 12% compared to last year, but it was actually probably down more than that when you consider that we've got a bunch of new acreage in production, or in like fourth leaf instead of third, or fifth leaf instead of fourth. So looking at it in terms of tons per acre, we were at almost exactly 2.5 tons per acre, which the last year that was basically like that was 2021. And I think if it turns out like 2021, we're all going to be happy.
Oh, I think we'll be happy.
Cool. So that's consider that a little teaser. I will publish that blog probably tomorrow if you want the deep dive into that 2024 harvest. And then, of course, we'll continue to share about it as we get to know the wines, put the blends together, and start to get them into bottle.
I look forward to reading it and remember what happened to the last few months of my life.
Yeah, sometimes you have very much been looking at trees, and I'm trying to step out and see the forest.
Yeah.
But obviously, to make a good forest, you need a whole bunch of really good trees. So
yeah,
thank you for that attention. Cool. Okay, let's dive into the En Gobelet. So this is a wine that we started. I think the first vintage was 2007, if I remember right. And it came out of a tasting that we did during the blending trials, where we remarked that the Mourvedre and the Grenache lots that came from our first couple of head trained, dry farmed, wide spaced blocks shared this kind of elegance that set them apart from a lot of the closer spaced blocks. And we put the wine together. It ended up being 2007 was a very lush, ripe, rich year. We ended up deciding that it missed some of the structure that in a Rhone blend would come from Syrah. We didn't have any head trained Syrah, so we ended up using some Tannat to give it a little bit of firmness, a little bit of darkness. Obviously, it's evolved since then, but it still comes entirely from those head trained, dry farmed, wide spaced vineyard blocks. And I would love to know kind of how you think about, like, what you think is special about the blocks that are farmed that way, and how you think that shows through in the wine.
Oof. Okay, so I mean, this is a question I've been asked before. So as far as I saw the mandate for me when I started working with Tablas was to make wines that were expressions as close as I could make them to the piece of land that Haas and Perrin had searched so hard to find. And that was pretty much it. So how do we get there? And of course, it starts in the vineyard. I mean, purity of a wine, purity of place, somewhereness, if we want to use that term, comes from the vineyard first and foremost. And we originally were planted on trellis systems, intending to dry farm, but perhaps planted a little tighter than we could, not realizing quite how aggressive these soils were. And I just started seeing dry farm vineyards around in other parts of my life, in Paso Robles, particularly, as most of these Zinfandel, if I'm honest, because that's the foundation of Paso's business. And that's where all the old vineyards are, the historic vineyards is in. But realizing, look, there's a 100-year-old Zinfandel vineyard that's about a mile away as the crow flies, that is 100% dry farm. There is no water, there is no irrigation. It's planted in the old style. It's planted like Beaucastel. It's a En Gobelet. It's a head trained vine. So it really got my attention thinking, why do we not do that? And Scruffy Hill that we were just looking at in that picture was really our first big foray into that. There it is. And it remains just an incredible vineyard. And so it's all about sense of place for me. And that's why I wanted to go in that direction. And the side benefits, of course, which I don't think any of us were particularly thinking about at the time, is it doesn't use any water. I mean, it relies on rainfall. There is, as you can see in that picture, there is no choice for supplemental irrigation in there. It is what it is. So those roots have to dig deep. I like to say it's the purest expression of a piece of land, because we have little to do with it. We prune it, we cultivate it, we spray a little sulfur for mildew when we can get in there, which isn't for long, because once it grows, you can't get a tractor in there. So it is its own thing. And then we bring that to the cellar and we do our best. Jason made the comment earlier, I forget what he was talking about, but we do our best to stay out of the way and let these vines and these sections of vineyard show what they are and what they bring to the table. So I was nervous in the first plantings for sure, because was it going to work with varieties that were not planted that way in our region? But over time, and that vineyard was planted in somewhere in the 2006 region, and it's really healthy still, and it's producing better fruit than it ever has. In our blind blending trials, it's always in the top section of our choices. So to answer the question more simply, to me, a head train dry farm vineyard where we have the minimum impact is the purest expression of a piece of land. And I believe that's what we want to do, and I think that's the best way to achieve it. And we continue down that road. We'll continue to do some trellis stuff too and other styles, but I think we're all, in some form or another, true dry farming is what we believe will deliver the wine that we want to the glass.
There's a question from Sarah on what we do in terms of cover crops in that area. So we do cover crops, but the main difference is that in those dry farm blocks, to keep them from really drawing all of the moisture away from these vines that we have no ability to supplement, then we graze the sheep over it in the winter, and then we will disc that into the soil after we get bud break. So we do intensive cover cropping in the winter, and then turn that in so that it starts decomposing in the soil and breaks up the root systems that would compete with the vines potentially.
We do spread compost that we make on site from our harvest leavings too. Not every year, because we don't make enough to do anywhere every year, but occasionally we'll get some of that. And the cover crop's important to us. I mean, our biggest task with a vineyard like that is to maintain the moisture in the soil. So we have to preserve that. That's our main function. So yes, we're taking care of it, but it's minimal.
Yeah. And one of the fun things oh, cool. Thanks, Bev. Yeah, it is the freshness. I feel like that's still what we taste when we get those dry farm head trained En Gobelet blocks is that kind of elegance and freshness and brightness, but still complexity behind that. And these wines have turned out to age really beautifully.
I really thought that we would see more intensity and more dark characters, more weight with this style of farming, but proved to be completely wrong. And there's an elegance and a finesse to it that I was not expecting to get from this style. And I think that was better than I had hoped, for sure.
And one of the cool things is that in this wine, as well as in the wine that we're going to have next, there is a decent amount of a new wide-spaced head-trained dry farm vineyard that we call Jewel Ridge.
Look at.
So it is named. It is a jewel, but it is named after Jewel, this vineyard dog who adopted Neil. When did she adopt you?
Really early. She was the first resident Tablas Creek dog. She lived here when we lived here on the property. She she was a friend of ours got her, and she couldn't contain her on their property, so she came out here, and she was able to run free and do her thing. She's a great dog.
Yeah, she made it to like 16 or 17, some
16 or 17, tough
very
tough
advanced
old
age.
dog she was.
Yeah, she was great. Anyway, she is buried up at the top of the hill that we call now Jewel Ridge. And we started planting Jewel Ridge in what, 2019, 18, 19?
I mean, it's been a long project. I mean, started with Levi, and it's just been a very, very hard project because that hill has every exposure. It's an incredible piece of land. It has every exposure, and it's right in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's surrounded by woodland and natives. So every every adverse pressure you can imagine, we get rodents and all of that. Go for squirrels. So it's taken us a long time. And I would have to credit Jordy over the last 4 years with coming up with we irrigate these to get them started. Getting that done was really, really important. So this year was really the first year where we got a substantial chunk off of there, and it's so exciting. It's such an insane, beautiful piece of property, and the soils are incredible. The exposures are great. It's just a wild piece of land.
So Bev asks why there are bare spots, and that's just that those are vines that like didn't take the first year that we had to replant, right? So they're just younger vines in those spots that look empty.
They're either younger vines or they're missing. Yeah, I mean it's brutal out there. So, and it's really hard to go in there, and we will do it. We will go in there and we'll try and fill in all the spaces, but it's none of these photographs give you a true picture of how steep those hills are. I mean, it's a challenge to walk those slopes for sure. So yeah, they're either very, very young, very, very small, or missing for one reason or another. You know, it's also there's a beautiful picture from the top there. That's a great picture.
That's the early spring, so that would be probably like April.
That's right up the top. I tell people that's my second office. That's where I go and sit and do my emails on my phone when I need to get out of the building. It's an incredible spot.
And one of the cool things, people sometimes think of young vines as needing like a decade before they start to show the intensity and the character to get used in our top wines. But we found that the lots off of Jewel, there haven't been a lot of them. There may be 3 or 4 lots off of Jewel in 2022, and maybe a little more than that 2023. This year, as Neil said, was the first year where we got really substantial tonnage off of that. But those lots, and we do all of our tastings blind for our blending trials, and those Jewel Ridge lots have consistently gotten some of our highest grades from the very first year. So we can only dream of how great they're going to be once those vines are a generation old.
I mean, let's be clear, planting that vineyard in that way was not the easy option. It would have been a lot easier to pull water out there and run irrigation, but I think we will absolutely reap the benefits of that well, I may not, but the next lot will reap the benefits of those when those vines get old and their roots are down deep in those soils.
Excellent. Okay, let's dive into wine number 6, which is the Esprit de Tablas 2022.
And by the way, I thought that wine was tasting really good.
The En Gobelet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young, but special wine.
Cool. Okay, so 2022 Esprit, kind of like the 2022 Esprit Blanc, had 6 of the white Chateauneuf grapes in it. The 22 Esprit Red has 6 of the red Chateauneuf grapes in it. Mourvedre, Grenache, Syrah, and then little bits of Vaccarez, Senso, and Counoise. It was a year where I remember we had the pleasure after COVID of getting both Francois and César Perrin here to do the blending with us. So that was a treat. We haven't had them both here, I think, since Cesar was in grad school at getting a degree at UC Davis, which
There they are.
yeah, there they are. That was really fun. But I remember from that blending session, the first day when we did a lot of the kind of the trace varietals and focused on Grenache, and there's like Grenache and Counoise and Senso and Vacarez, and we thought, it's going to be a pretty good vintage for a difficult year, which was so hot. It's going to be a pretty good vintage. And then we got to day 2, and like we tasted Mourvedre and we tasted Syrah, and we were like, never mind, check that. This is going to be one of the greatest vintages that we've ever had. It was really interesting to me how much our impression of that year changed just from one day to the next. So anyway, that's my sort of vivid memory of that blending session. Do you have any memories of on your side?
I mean, similar to what you're describing, it's always for me a treat to taste with. I mean, it's a treat always to taste with all the Perrin family, but Francois in particular, for me, he's the best taster I get to taste with. He's just very clear and very simple about it. He sees very, very clearly things that most people miss, and it's boom, there it is. And I get the look over the glasses or the nod when he sits there and says, "This is a grand vintage, the Grand Vin." It's a huge compliment for us to hear that out of his mouth, and you don't get it every year, that's for sure. I mean, but just to sit at the table with those guys and just they don't know the wines here like we do because they're not here every day. They know Boke style wines, so that's their point of reference. So it's pretty strong foundation they have to compare us to, shall I say. So it's great to see them when their reactions, good and bad. I like to hear the criticism as well because it gives us a path forward. But just such a breadth of knowledge for these varieties from Francois particularly, I think is always exciting for me, and just great people to sit and taste with. I mean, just very thoughtful, and they're not flowery and verbose about it. They just, this is what we're seeing, this is what it is, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the blend this year, like you compare this to 21, where we leaned heavier into a lot of the trace varieties. 2022, I guess mostly Mourvedre, Grenache, and Syrah. That's 90% of this blend. And I think sometimes we talk a lot about those new varieties because they're fun and they're new. But I thought it might be worth just kind of having you talk a little bit about what you feel like each of the 3 main grapes brings to a blend like this. So Mourvedre, Grenache, Syrah. We maybe talked a lot about Grenache, but like particularly Mourvedre and Syrah, what do you feel like those 2 bring to this Esprit?
I mean, I think that brings up a good point, though. I mean, you say we've already talked about Grenache, but we've talked about Grenache as a varietal. And things become very different when you start to go to blends. I think the way things play with each other are not always how you would assume that they are, even within a vintage to vintage. What I think is going to be is quite often not what I think. So I always have a bit of a hard time with that question. But for me, Mourvedre is a great foundation. It brings great depth of earth and some dark fruit, some leather, some of those really deep core flavors and aromas that I like. Not showy, not flamboyant, but really a great foundation. What I want for the core of this wine. Grenache, in so many ways, the opposite. Can be so flamboyant, so showy, and big fruit and lovely. I mean, just brings a welcome feel to the wine. Syrah, is reliably dark and has incredible structure and dark fruits and licorice and great flavors that I enjoy. I find it quite serious off of this property. Starting to get into the others, I mean, Baccarat is new to us a little bit, but it brings great austerity, great darkness, great tannic structure, and some acidity. I'm not sure still where all these ultimately fit into the Esprits of the future. Sanso, I think, is a grape that we'll see more and more of in our area. I think it does really well here. Easier. It's more in the Counoise. Counoise and Sanso both a little bit more delicate, more fruit forward, gentler, less structure, less tannin, more easygoing, icing on the cake characters. Counoise I love, pretty and bright and almost Pinot Noir like in many, many ways. Great acidity, great red fruits, often quite crunchy. So they all bring very clear things to the table, but each year that changes a little bit. You know, how does this year's Mourvèdre act with this year's Grenache? And I mean, simply for me over the years, where it's been Mourvèdre, Grenache, Syrah, Counoise, Mourvèdre always leads, Counoise always finishes, and it's what Syrah and Grenache do in the middle that has made the difference for us. It's such a great job sitting down and working with all these varietals and making blends. It's such an intimidating time, even still sitting at that blending table, particularly when you have Francois Perrin coming and you're laying your year's graft on the table in front of him, every single piece of it. You know, there's nothing that is omitted from those tastings. If something was a disaster, he's going to get tasted blind, and we'll see where it goes. So, I mean, I never cease to be really excited about blending these with these varietals.
Yeah, that it is. It's always one of my real highlights of the year is sit around that table and see everything, because up until that point it's sort of like each one is its own individual science experiment where you're trying to get it from what it was to a clean finished wine as smoothly as you can. And at that point, it goes from being a whole bunch of individual challenges into the wines, like little by little, that we're going to come to know over the coming years and decades. And I think it's such a cool process.
I mean, I think I speak for the cellar team when we sit at that table. The first 2 days are stressful, and because it is your soul is laid bare from the year's work when you taste through all those varietals. Once you get into that and you realize, okay, everything's good, the wines are strong, and you start to blend, then it gets really exciting.
Yeah. Okay, a couple questions here, a couple comments and a couple questions. So Sarah commenting that her parents are opening a vertical of Esprit tomorrow, which I think that sounds pretty great. If you are interested, we did a vertical tasting of Esprit this summer, and I wrote up the results on the blog. So if you go back into, there it is. If you go back into the blog from, it was July, I think, you can get our thoughts. Again, that's not that those should be your thoughts. You should have your own thoughts. But if you'd like some context, that's there.
Another challenging part of my job.
Yeah. And then a comment from Z Randy C that he just opened a 2010 Esprit de Beaucastel and double decanted it. That's pretty fun. I just got back from Boston. I was there last week, and I hosted a wine dinner at a cool restaurant in Cambridge, Massachusetts, called Tallulah, which I would highly recommend if you are in or near there. But we did a side-by-side of the 2010 Esprit and the 2021, which was really cool. Because, again, 2021 is still young. It's robust. It's got a lot of big tannins. It's very red-fruited. It's exuberant and youthful and super impressive. And then 2010 was darker toned and just like smooth as silk. And the contrast of the two of them was super, super fun. Cool. Anything else about this wine before we kind of dive into some else of what's going on and the future, Neil?
I think it tastes beautiful. I think it tastes great now. I would not hesitate to open that bottle now and share it at my dinner table. But it's very primary still. It's very youthful still. Lots of bright fruit, and it's very playful. But I think it'll be grand in 10 years, 5-10 years.
Yeah, Randy's comment. There you go. Want to see what it's like in 10 years? Open that 2010 now.
Randy Coleman.
Yep.
As smooth it is, Randy.
Cool. Okay. Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's coming next. So we have, I think, gotten back onto a pattern that I'm really happy about, doing like 5 or 6 big events here at the winery every year. So obviously a lot of people were out last week for the in-person pickup party that we do, but we've also got back to the pattern of doing 2 big retrospective tastings. So we do a horizontal tasting every February, and a vertical tasting. We did that vertical tasting of Esprit this summer, where we dive into a different wine each year. That usually happens in July. We restarted our summer dinner series, which for a long time was a pig roast. We restarted that with a lamb roast with Chef Jeff's help in August. That was super, super fun and tasty. We will be hosting our next major event, will be our En Primeur tasting, where we give people a chance to taste the upcoming vintage. So this will be the 2023 Esprit and Panoply, part of a program that we've now been doing for 20 years, giving people a glimpse into those wines and a chance to get them as futures. So keep an eye on your emails and also your physical mailboxes, because we do send out, not everyone, but certainly everyone who has participated in the past, and a handful of others should look for an actual physical invitation. We, in the tasting room, we have added a new tasting that we're calling the Legacy Tasting, where we give people a chance to see some older vintages of the Esprit Red. We've been pouring the 07 Esprit, which has been a real treat for the last couple of months. It also gives people a chance to dive into Panoply, which we don't show very often, but we've got a couple of vintages of Panoply that we have enough of to show. So if that sounds like an experience that you would be interested in, check it out on the website, or just ask about it when you come to the tasting room. You can make a reservation for it, but you can also just show up and say, hey, I'd like to do a legacy tasting, and we'll happily fit you in. We have also been getting on the road a lot. We've had a busy summer and fall. I know I've been on the road. I've been on the road a ton, and I will be actually leaving in 2 days to take the Tablas Creek show to Europe. I'm going to be in London for a week and in Frankfurt for a few days, and then down at the Rhone. But we've hosted dinners and tastings in all kinds of places like Boston, Baltimore, Chicago, Minneapolis, Santa Fe, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco. I was in Visalia earlier this week. So tons of stuff on the road. That's me from a really great dinner in Baltimore, which I wrote up on the blog as kind of an example of what sets a great wine dinner apart from just a merely good one. We have also been trying to do a better job of sharing where we will be going. So this is our kind of on tour post. So if you see a post that looks like this on any of our social media, this is our kind of took this idea from some of the bands that I love, where they do regular social media posts of like where they're going to be appearing in concert. So don't expect me to sing or play guitar, but if you want to check out where Tablas is coming close to you, just keep an eye on those emails and that social media. We have gotten a couple of interesting questions about how things will age. So before I step to the next stage, Ian, do you want to pull up the question about how we would see this vintage aging? That was back from a few comments ago. Oh, thank you, Mary. So there's Red Emma 49 commented, "How would we see this vintage aging?" What do you think, Neil? What's your take on how you think this 2022 is going to age?
I think now it's super bright and fresh and fruit forward, very pretty. I think it will remain quite a pretty wine, but I think it will, as they always do, they just kind of mellow and even out over time. Like the brightness of fruit is ching 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 here, where with age things marry together, and the Mourvèdre will start showing more of its earth tones and leather tones. It'll take over a little bit from that Counoise and Grenache brightness that we're tasting, and then those tannins. I mean, the tannins are pretty there, but they're not super aggressive. So I don't. They will mellow a little bit and they will soften a little bit, but I think they're pretty pleasant right now.
Yeah, I feel like for me, there's a couple of things that happen. One is that like the fruit tone does tend to go from this like really pure red, like red currant, fresh red currant fruit. It tends to get darker, turn more towards dark currant or black currant or plum with time. And then that textural thing that we were talking about with Randy with the 2010, there is this kind of silkiness that the wines get with a few years that is I think really cool.
Well, as I retasted, on the back end there is you do feel the tannins. There's a dryness to the tannins. It feels like Grenache tannins to me, and those will soften also. You know, as time, everything integrates better as this stuff ages. That's very cool.
And again, if you want to know where they're going, the best thing to do is to check in on some older ones, which you can do either by coming out here and doing that legacy tasting, or we almost always have a couple older vintages that we have available. So they're not always available on the online order form, but if you call up our wine club desk and are like, I'd really love an older Esprit or an older Esprit Blanc, what do you have? They almost always have a couple of older vintages that they can get for you. So
really,
that's the way to do it.
Really,
and also check in on
that's a great thing to do. It's a great thing that we offer, but it's also a great thing to do to just order a bottle of whatever we have, older Esprit, red or white, and taste that. I think it's a really cool facility that you're able to do through here, and I love doing it, endlessly.
And I remember my dad at the beginning insisting that we keep a decent library of everything because one day we would really want it. And in the early years when we were still like having to put money in every year, setting aside wine that we knew that we could sell was painful. But I'm glad he insisted.
Yeah, I'm glad it's there for sure.
The other thing that I would recommend if you want to know where these wines go is do check out the blog. We do a regular series called Library Wines where we dive into things in our own cellar, sometimes also older wines from Beaucastel or other treasures that happen to have come to us. But we go back and do tastings of those wines regularly. And when appropriate, I'll update the vintage chart that we keep. So if you want to have a sense of how good the wine will be, is it the right moment to open it, check out the vintage chart. If you want a sense of what it might be like, check out the blog. Because that's that we do dive in a systematic way into those older wines. And then that basically, I hope, answers the question that Keith had about having a 2013 Esprit de Tablas. We've somehow managed not to drink yet. So check out that blog from this summer where we tasted through every vintage of Esprit. I think I remember actually thinking that the 2013 that I would wait another little bit because of the path that the other ones, like the 12, has gone through. I feel like the 13 is going to be even better in a year or two than it is right now. So, but don't trust me on that. There's a lot of vintages in that blog, and I don't 100% remember. Have you opened a 13 Esprit recently, Neil?
I have had one quite recently, and it was beautiful. I would also encourage when you open a bottle of our wines, an older bottle, to reach out to us and tell us how it was. I mean, on the good side for me when the greatest review I get beyond anything in a magazine is when I get the odd email from someone that opened their 2013 Esprit with dinner with friends on the weekend, and it was a great thing and made their dinner even better. There's no better review than that for me. But for our own interest too, we have our opinions, and that's what's on the vintage chart. But having feedback from you guys is great. If you open that 13 and it's time to drink it, let us know. Let us know what you're seeing, because we love feedback.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, I see Ian put that Esprit vertical blog into the comments. That's super. Okay. So in addition to obviously the in-person events that we host here and we host on the road, we have continued with a couple of the different virtual event series. So we've got obviously this virtual wine club party that we do every spring and fall, and we can still do virtual tastings for people who want to organize them for a group. But it's been really fun. I've also continued with the Instagram live series that I started in the early weeks of COVID as an opportunity to talk to the members of our team and give them a chance to share what they've been working on. And it has turned into something much greater than I think I ever conceived of it being. So we just got to our 100th episode with the great writer and reviewer Antonio Galloni, the founder of Vinous Media. He was our 100th. But we've had guests like writers Andrea Robinson and winemaker Steve Edmonds and Bill Easton. We had global superstar Pink, who that was fun. She was an absolute trip. If you have not watched this, it is on our Instagram feed and on our website. We've got more cool people coming up. We've got a really cool British wine TV personality. We don't really have wine TV personalities in the United States, but there is a cool one in England whose name is Amelia Singer. She's going to be my next guest coming up in early December. It's early December. No, middle of November. So this is going to continue. I hope to have even more exciting guests next year. So if you have been tuning in, thank you. I've enjoyed the comments and the questions, and we'll continue. It's been really fun. So Neil, what are you looking forward to in your world?
Well, I mean, we move now from harvest to vineyard, and getting cover crops in the ground, getting compost spread, doing all the things I do. But in anticipation of that question, just before we started this, I went and pulled a sample, because one of the things I'll start doing now is going down to the barrel room and tasting things that we did early in harvest. So, as I say, in anticipation of this question, I pulled that glass, perhaps that you're tasting, which was the first red that we harvested this year. So it's always really exciting after harvest, and you've watched the ferment, you smelled all the fermentation smells, the punch downs, the pump overs, the daily work of harvest. Now to go down to the silence of the barrel room and start dipping the thief and tasting wines that are starting to show what they will be in the future is probably the most exciting thing towards the end of the year for me. So the sample I pulled for you was this is the Full Circle Pinot Noir from your property. It's the full blend of all different clones with just a splash from a brand new barrel of that wine. So give you a kind of view of what I get excited about this time of year is now you kind of see where this wine's going. This is the first time you've tasted it, so kind of interested in your perception of it.
I think it's super cool, sort of silky and nice kind of chalky tannins that I really like. And I feel like it's not yet showing a ton of that Pinot-y character, but it's lovely fruit and lovely texture. It's going to be fun.
It's really very, very primary, and I mean the tannins are still so raw in there, and Pinot's not a particularly tannic wine, but you can feel them on your tongue. I mean, for me, when I see this at this point, it's exciting. we did some slightly different things with the Pinot this year, hoping for a bit more brightness and freshness. And you can see that, you can feel that in this wine. We were scared that the color would not be quite as deep as it's been the past couple of years, but color's looking beautiful. So
it was dark enough when you put it on the table. I was like, oh, it looks like our new Syrah is ready to taste.
Yeah.
So,
but we pressed it very, very early this year, which is another thing we played with. Every year we make little adjustments to try and improve on what we did in years past. So that's exciting. I also tasted the biodynamics when I was trying to pick which wine to share with everybody. We went to the biodynamic Syrah, which is gorgeous, and a Syrah Clone D with lots of stems, which is really, really cool. So, and I tasted the Finaudy Red too, which is a bit hazy, but it's exciting. So that's what I'm excited about, seeing the fruits of all this hard work that the cellar team have been doing.
super cool. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for taking time on a Friday evening to join us. Thank you, Neil, for taking a chunk out of your Friday evening to come talk Tablas.
It's great. I love it.
You have any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I'm just, I kind of reiterating your thing. I think it's one of the great things that came out of COVID, and there's not many of those in my opinion, but this is one that we chose to do this and get to share an experience with the people that choose to tune in and listen to us for a couple of hours and share their thoughts, which is it's so important for me. I'm spend my life locked away in a cellar in the vineyard and barrel room, which is lovely. I love my life, but I don't get out like you do and get response and feedback and discuss what we do with people. So for me, it's a great moment to get these comments and see what people are thinking.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you again, everybody who joined on behalf of the parents, on behalf of the rest of my family, on behalf of Neil and the amazing cellar team, Ian behind the controls. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of the Tablas Creek family. We're grateful.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
this old shipwright. Then I will be